James here with the Oracle Outlook for the week starting July the 29th, 2019. Thanks so much for tuning in and joining me for this week's video reading. I am so happy to have you here. This week I'm continuing to work with the weekly spread, which is a spread that I showcased in last week's video reading. Because it was so well received, I thought to myself, if it's not broke, don't fix it. The only difference being that instead of working with Lenormand as I did last week, I'm going to give it a go using Gypsy Witch cards. Specifically, I'm working with the vintage Gypsy Witch fortune-telling oracle cards. They are by Lynn Boyle, and I will be leaving information about the deck in the description box below. So now that I've set things up, let's get to the table and take a closer look at the cards that are going to be making up this week's weekly spread. And here we are with the cards on the table, and I'm going to take a few moments to shuffle the deck. And as I shuffle, I'm focusing on my usual intention for these weekly general readings. And that is for the information, for the insight, for the guidance and advice that is going to be most helpful and beneficial as we move through the upcoming week. Feeling one more time will be good. All right. Now I'm going to go ahead and cut the deck. And fan the cards out. And this week I'm going to work once again with the weekly spread that I used last week. And so that consists of 7 cards. So I'm looking for 7 cards in the fan that are getting my attention. And I have the first 3. See this one over here for 4. 5. Card 6. And I'm looking at this one for 7. Those are the 7 cards. Take the remainder of the deck up. Now I'm going to take a moment to count the cards back. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. My personal check to make sure I actually have 7 cards. And now I'm going to lay the cards out. So if you're new to seeing the weekly spread, this is how it gets laid out. Each card represents one day in the week. So the first 3 cards go at the top. And they're going to represent Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday because I start my weekly Oracle Outlook readings with Monday as the first day for the reading. So this is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. The next card goes in the middle. This represents the 4th day, Thursday, or the heart of the matter, or the heart of the spread, because the remaining cards go at the bottom beneath it. And they represent the weekend. Right? This is Thursday, middle card is Thursday, then this is Friday, Saturday, and then the last card is Sunday. And so, just as I did last week, we could look at the row to indicate an overall message. We could read the bottom row in a similar way. And then we could also read these 2 cards as a pair. We can read the vertical column in the middle as another message, and then we could pair the final 2 cards, as well as maybe taking into account the diagonal and then the corners, and the diagonal this way and the corners. So we'll just play it by ear and see where the reading takes us. Okay, so now starting things off with the first day, Monday, the card we have in that spot is, okay, so here we have the mouse and the 6 of spades. So when I work with the Gypsy Witch cards, I tend to look at the symbol, and then I also consider the playing card insert. So going with the idea of the mouse for me can represent stress and worry. So things could start off next week on a stressful note, or it could be something that gets carried over from the previous week, starts the week off because there is stress and maybe even potentially some worry around that. So it could just be something that gets carried over, or that the week starts off with a very stressful or worrisome situation. Now, another thing that the mouse card can represent is loss for me. So this could just represent something that surrounds some kind of loss, and maybe the stress and worry is around loss of some kind. But it can also represent something that's on a gradual stage or state of decline, because I tend to look at this as something that's decaying, something that may be deteriorating, something that may be lessening, but it's gradual because the mouse nibbles at something, right? So it wouldn't be something that would be sweeping or dramatic or epic. It would just be something that has been happening a little bit at a time. It's making me feel like something is dwindling, right? So there's that. It could also be because the mice on the card are by food, so this could be something that is either being ruined or something that's being spoiled or some form of contamination, because again, playing on the idea that mice are around food. So it could just represent, I'm playing on the image. It could be the idea of like something spoiling your appetite is coming to me. So it could be, with that in mind, there may be some sort of dietary change that somebody's making, or if I go with the food aspect on the card, they're having to lose something from their diet, right? Maybe a change in diet, something that has to be taken off your dietary menu, so to speak, and there may be some sense of feeling like that's ruining things for you or spoiling things for you, right? So there is that added component, and I'm just playing on the idea that there's food on the card, right? But for me, typically, this represents some sort of loss, something that's lessening over time. It's gradual, and there may be a sense of stress and worry about that. Now, the playing card insert is the Six of Spades. So I would add to that, what the card means for me is that this could represent ending a matter once and for all, right? And so the six can represent responsibility. So it could just be a matter of taking the responsibility to end a situation once and for all. And then with that, the Six of Spades talks about moving on. So there's a sense of like, once I end this, it allows me to move on. Now, if I bring the mouse or the mice aspect of the card back in, there may be something that you're having to deal with. It may come at some loss to you in order to end the situation and to move on. Right? Or that the idea of ending something once and for all and moving on is creating a sense of stress and worry. Right? If I bring all the elements of the card together. I will add this as a way to wrap this card up. If I go with the idea that we're talking about stress and worry with the mouse or the mice, and the idea about moving on with the Six of Spades, in a positive sense, this card can be about making progress. Right? So there may be some difficulty. Spades for me represents what is a difficulty or a challenge. So there may be some difficulty around moving forward or making some progress, or that we realize we need to make progress and there's stress and worry attached to that. So that is how I would look at the mouse or the mice and the Six of Spades starting the week off. So now, like I said, because we could look at the cards here as an overall message, this card here in the middle of the row could add more information to mouse or mice. So let's take a look at that now. And here we have, okay, so here we have the moon and the Five of Hearts. So starting with the moon for me can represent career. So there may be something having to do with a loss or a decline or stress and worry around one's career, because moon for me is the career card in the deck. right? So there is that. It could also be stress and worry around one's reputation, because moon is a card for me that represents reputation. So it could be someone's reputation has been lessened or is dwindling. Right, so there is that, or there is some sort of stress and worry around one's career, and it may be some sort of career loss if I pair the two cards together. Right, now it could also be if somebody's dealing with stress and worry, then the moon can represent something that needs to be recognized. So it could just be a matter of maybe it's time to recognize what are the things in your life that are producing stress and worry for you. Is it possible that you are reacting to external conditions and circumstances? And if that's the case, what could you do to lessen, going back to the mouse or the mice, lessen those stressors? Right? Because the moon is asking you to recognize them. And recognition could just literally mean becoming more aware. Right? Now, for some people, another aspect of the moon that's coming to me is that this card can represent emotional satisfaction. So somebody may be dealing with a situation where the emotional satisfaction has been gradually declining, gradually lessening, gradually diminishing. Right? And if that's the case, what can you do to restore that sense of emotional satisfaction? Right? And I'm going to add to it, it could be a lessening or dwindling of emotional satisfaction in one's career. So could this be a time where you might need to consider a career reset? Now, if we're talking about the idea of dietary changes or losing something on your dietary menu, then this card could literally be talking about something that happens at night, because the moon for me can represent the night and evenings. So it could just be a matter of, maybe not eating things at night, not spoiling your appetite or doing something with your digestive system at night, right, in terms of food intake. So there may be a particular food or beverage that maybe you need to kind of lose, quote unquote, mice at night. And this is just to give you an example. So for me personally, if I look at that, one of the things that I have to consider is eating ice cream at night. I love vanilla ice cream, and there's one in particular, one brand in particular that stands out, but I love vanilla ice cream. And I also have a habit of eating it at night. And then what happens sometimes is that over the course of the night, I may get a headache because I will wake up the next day with a headache. And it's usually because I usually attribute it to what was the last thing I ate the night before, and I go, oh yeah, I had that bowl of ice cream, and I know better. But sometimes I can't resist. The temptation is too great. So that's just an example. So you may fall into a similar category. It may not be ice cream for you, but it may be something else. And you know that you should lose that particular thing at night. Right? So that's just one way of talking about the idea that the mouse card or the mice card could be talking about something being spoiled or something being ruined regarding one's diet. Right? And it could literally mean like you have to lose something at night, meaning something either you're eating or drinking at night that you have to kind of give up. So again, the moon aspect of the card can represent, first and foremost for me, career and reputation. What are we known for? Could also be about recognition. What do we need to recognize? Emotional satisfaction. And then literally something that takes place at night or in the evening. Now, if we bring the Five of Hearts into the picture, the Five of Hearts would suggest something changing, because the number 5 for me represents change on an emotional level, because The suit of hearts for me can represent feelings and emotions. And that would be another way to bring the more intuitive quality or aspect of this card, because for some people the moon can represent one's intuition. And intuition works through the recognition of our feelings. Because the Five of Hearts as a card can represent feminine energy, and our intuition works through our feminine nature. So overall, this card could just be asking on Tuesday that our intuition may be heightened to some degree or in some way, and we're being asked to pay attention to it, to recognize our intuitive impulses, right? Intuitive guidance, right? It could also be because the moon represents the night. It could be encouraging us to pay attention to our dreams, because the moon could represent the subconscious or unconscious. So that's one possibility. Another with the Five of Hearts is that this is an opportunity card, right? So on Tuesday, there could be, maybe if we combine the moon being career and the Five of Hearts being opportunity, there may be a career opportunity presented, which is nice if one's been concerned, going with the mouse before it, about one's career, right? So again, the Five of Hearts can represent an opportunity. It could also represent, because I talked about dreams, this card can represent a dream coming true, right? So it could be, if we go with the idea that I was talking about sleep dreams and talking about intuition, pay attention, for those of you who are into your dreams and you actively record them and interpret them, all those kinds of things. This could be a week where you are having precognitive dreams. If we go with the idea that the Five of Hearts talks about dreams coming true, then this could represent precognitive dreams. So if that interests you in any way, you're being asked to pay attention. One way for me, because when I had my precognitive dreams, one of the things that I noticed in mine were that my dreams were very abstract, and I was not a character in the dream. So if I have a dream and I'm not in the dream in any shape, form, or fashion, and it's more abstract and more symbolic than usual, chances are it may be a precog dream. So if that interests you, like I said, pay attention to the symbolism in your dreams and see if you can notice the difference between what you might consider to be a quote-unquote normal dream versus a precognitive dream, right? And of course, you won't really know it's a precog dream until the event that's being depicted in the dream actually takes place. But now, if I go with the idea that the dreams coming true aspect of the Five of Hearts isn't about a precognitive dream, that could just represent something that you've been dreaming about in your waking life, an experience or an event could be coming true. And then the last thing that I will say about the Five of Hearts is that this is a card that can depict a woman for me, going with the idea that it represents feminine energy, so it can represent a woman. So this could be, for some people, this could be a female relative or a female friend. Right, so there may be a situation, if we go with the previous card, that may involve a woman. She could be a relative or a friend. So that's what I would say about the Five of Hearts and the moon. So now let's take a look at the next card. Okay, so now here we have letter and the King of Diamonds. Okay, so now the letter card represents communication for me. So here we have another possibility here of issues around communication, right? And the interesting thing to note about the Six of Spades as a card is that the number 6 for me can represent communication. And so with the spade, it could represent a challenge or a difficulty around communication. So here we have it being repeated through the letter aspect of this card, right? So the letter, remember, can represent written correspondence and written communication, first and foremost. So that would be emails, text messages, right? Receiving something in the mail. It can also be about paperwork or documentation. And then sometimes I look at it as notifications, right? So if we're being notified about something, then that would go back to the moon about recognition. So there's something about recognition and notification, being put on notice. Right? So now if we go with the idea that the previous card was talking about a career opportunity, then there may be some sort of paperwork or documentation that's attached to that going into Wednesday. So for me, this could be somebody maybe needing to do some work with their CV or their resume, right? If we talk about the moon representing career, right? And the idea of an opportunity being presented. And with the Six of Spades from the previous card about moving on, right? Ending something once and for all and moving on. It could be something career related, and then we're having to maybe dust off our CV, our resume, or needing to update it because there's some sort of change with our career, and we may be embarking on the next stage or phase in our career. Remember I talked about the idea about a career reset. And then that's how we can bring in the King of Diamonds, the playing card insert. For me, my chief go-to meaning with the King of Diamonds is that he can represent an entrepreneur or someone who works in the financial industry or the financial sector, one who handles money. This could be a money manager because the king symbolically can represent power, control, and mastery, but also somebody who's in a position of leadership and authority. So one or two things that happen is maybe somebody's thinking about leaving their quote unquote 9 to 5 and getting into the world of entrepreneurship, or that somebody's making a change and maybe they're going to have to uh, work with or communicate with somebody who fits the King of Diamonds. In terms of, somebody in a leadership position, somebody in a position of authority. Now, I will say this. If we go back to the first card, starting the week off, and the idea with the Six of Spades is about, ending a situation once and for all, moving on, making progress, and then the mouse or the mice represents stress and worry. I'm looking at the King of Diamonds, and this is about energy management. Because again, playing on the idea that the king can represent managers and management, then the suit of diamonds for me can represent energy. So this could be, again, energy management. So energy management in the sense of like, how can we manage our energy around the things that may be stressful or worrisome? Because that's energy, right? How can we change that? How can we master that? How can we get that energy under greater control? All aspects of the king, right? And then the king also represents mastery over all things physical, right? So that would go back to even the idea that I talked about dietary changes, right? And mastering that. This is about mastering your physical domain, and your body is part of that. And what you put into your body in terms of food, right? Now, since I talked about this idea about, financial management with the King of Diamonds, if it's not somebody who's working with money in any kind of way, then this could just be a matter of, what do you need to do to get your finances under control, especially if we mirror the cards and talking about this idea of stress and worry. It may be concerning finances and financial management, right? And what would you need to do to get that under greater control? And again, there may be some paperwork that's attached to that. I talked a couple of weeks ago about, somebody working on their credit history and wanting to repair that. There may be something more along those lines. And if it's not, I'm also thinking that if somebody's moving into the idea about entrepreneurship, King of Diamonds, there may be an element of, maybe there's seeking out a loan, getting something approved on a financial level or financial nature, and there's paperwork or documentation associated with that or connected to that. So I'm seeing that as all possibilities for letter and the King of Diamonds. Remember, letter is all about communication, paperwork, documentation. King of Diamonds can represent handling money, getting that under a greater sense of control, working in the financial sector or industry in some capacity, looking at the way we manage our energy, and getting our physical domain in order, right? Now, I will say this, as I laid the cards down, I'm reading the playing card inserts. Now, remember, one aspect of the Five of Hearts is that it can represent a woman. So this could be, again, a relative that's female or a female friend. Here we have a woman, and the King of Diamonds can represent a man. So we may have a situation with a woman and a man. What's going on? Here they're ending a situation once and for all. So this could be a split, divorce, people just going their parting of the ways. And there may be something having to do with responsibility, taking responsibility. Each party may be taking a look at their level of responsibility for the situation. Or that there's some sort of difficulty communicating or with communication between a woman and a man. So that's how I would look at the row. And so now let's take a look at the card that represents Thursday. This is also the heart of the line. So here we have, oh, how funny is this? Okay, so now here we have the House card and the Six of Hearts. So very interesting. So the House can represent one's home life. So this could be a situation that involves home and family. It could also be about real estate. How very interesting that I talked about the King of Diamonds representing the material domain or the physical domain. And finances, so there may be something having to do with a housing situation. Again, playing on the idea that the house can represent home and real estate, so there may be something of that. And that would be very interesting because the letter coming before this card can literally, the combination of letter and house could represent a mortgage note or some sort of paperwork or documentation concerning real estate and property. And if I consider that the King of Diamonds can be talking about an entrepreneur, this may be somebody who's either doing one or two things with house, either working from home, so this would be a home-based business, or a small retail establishment. I tend to look at house in that regard. It's like a boutique kind of thing, or a mom and pop type of business, a small retail store. Now, if somebody is dusting off their CV or their resume to work in a larger corporation or company, then this could be a department within an existing company or corporation. But again, my chief meaning for house can usually represent home, family. So if it's not family, it could be a family member, one that is in your immediate family, because I tend to look at this card as close, immediate family, right? You may not be living with the person, but it would be somebody who's considered a close family member, right? But it's making me feel like the focus here, as this being the focus card or the middle of the spread, is that there may be situations that are close to home that need our time and attention this week. Now, the Six of Hearts. Very interesting that we would have the Six of Hearts and the Five of Hearts, because the Six of Hearts is the opposite of the Five of Hearts in this regard. The Six of Hearts for me can represent a male relative or a male friend. Right, so very interesting. We have male energy with the Six of Hearts and female energy with the Five of Hearts. So this could be a situation involving two family members, one male, one female. Right? And I'm getting the idea that for some people it's a matter of getting your house in order. That's a phrase that just popped into my head. Now another aspect of the Six of Hearts for me, this is a card that can talk about enlightenment. So it could just be about something coming to light. We are becoming aware of something. And that enlightenment may have to do with home, family, a family member. And like I said, the Six of Hearts could be enlightenment about a male family member in particular. So that's how I would look at the house and the Six of Hearts on Thursday. So now let's take a look at Friday. And here we have, okay, so very interesting. So now there's a theme going on here. So now here we have Clover and the Five of Clubs. So the first thing I want to talk about in terms of a theme is that Clover can represent an opportunity. So we have that word opportunity being repeated because if you remember, the Five of Hearts is also a card that can represent opportunity. So there's something about opportunity. For me, with Clover, Clover can represent a change in luck because this can represent luck and good luck and fortune. So there may be something about one's luck turning around or changing for the better. It can also represent this idea about like synchronicity, about the idea about being in the right place at the right time. So again, Clover can represent an opportunity. It could also represent a situation where we may need to take a chance. And every time I say take a chance, I hear the ABBA song, Take a Chance on Me. So there may be an opportunity and you may have to take a chance on it. Sometimes this card can represent a brief window of time in connection to the opportunity. So it may be an opportunity where you might not have a whole lot of time to think it over or mull it over because the window of time attached to it is brief. So that's Clover. And then the Five of Clubs, as a playing card insert, for me, clubs is a suit that can represent something having to do with work or business. So how interesting is that? Because we had Moon, which represents career. And so sometimes when the Five of Clubs turns up, it can represent a change in one's work or business. Right? It could also represent business activity. Now, this is also a card that can talk about working with one's hands, right? So it could just be a matter of there may be some kind of activity or business at hand that we need to attend to on Friday. And it makes me feel like it's a matter of being hands-on, right? So if it's not actual physical work or labor, then it could just be a situation where you have to be more active in terms of being hands-on. Now another thing could be that if we go with the idea I talked about, one's resume or one's CV, then the Five of Clubs could be talking about a return to the working world. So it could be somebody who's had a pause in terms of working, and for whatever the reason is, there's a situation now that has produced itself where you may have to go back to work. And then in that regard, then this card can represent going on a job interview. So it's very interesting. We talked about this idea with letter being about the CV or the resume. And then following that, we have an opportunity, clover, for an interview, 5 of clubs. Right? So now I will say this, as I lay the card down, what's coming to me, if I look at the pairing here of mouse and clover, this idea here where I talked about maybe a change in diet with the first card is that one of the things we may need to lose something, and then what we're being introduced with clover is that sometimes clover is a card for me that can represent greens. So there may be somebody who may need to incorporate more greens into their diet. Right now, remember I talked about the possibility for me that this is talking about diet and dietary change, right? Then this could be, you know, instead of eating maybe stuff that's not so good for you, and maybe something that your body can't break down, or it takes a long time to digest. I'm playing on all that idea here, is that maybe this could represent greens, you know, introducing greens into your diet, and maybe even in the supplement form. Because now I'm seeing things like maybe chlorophyll or blue-green algae in terms of supplements. That's a nice way to introduce some greens into your diet if that works for you. You may want to do some investigation on that. But I know that those were 2 things that were very helpful to me. So, but yes, but clover can represent greens, and that's playing on the greenery in the card, right? So that is one thing I would offer. The other thing I would offer, because of the 5 of clubs, this is a card that can represent physical activity and exercise. So it could be along with maybe a dietary change, somebody's being asked to be more physically active. If we go with the idea that the 6 of spades can be about making progress, right? And this is a travel card that's being, you know, movement, then this card would say movement how? In the form of physical exercise. So it could be somebody needs to, you know, not just change their diet, but maybe exercise and work out. And then when I look at the playing card inserts, when I look at a spade followed by a club, this represents a problem, challenge, or difficulty that gets worked out. If I just read the suits, right? It says that you could work the problem out. It's just going to take some work and effort on your part. And that would be a nice way of saying, how can we be hands-on in terms of working that problem out? So that's how I would look at pairing those 2 cards. So now let's move on to the card that represents Saturday. And here we have, okay. So here we have the Shepherd card and the insert of the Jack of Spades. So going with the Shepherd card, this is the card in the deck for me that can represent spirituality. So this may be a day where we're making a shift here, right? So somebody may be focusing on their spirituality, their spiritual beliefs over the course of the weekend, or starting the weekend off. This could also represent a spiritual leader or spiritual teacher, and I'm playing on the idea that the shepherd has a flock and tends to the flock, right? And so for me personally, that has very Christian overtones, but if it's not that for you in particular, like if that doesn't float your boat or that's not the path that you're on, it would be whatever is the equivalent to your path, right? But this card can represent, you know, a spiritual teacher, spiritual leader, spiritual advisor. It could also be suggesting that maybe somebody, if we're going with the idea about entrepreneurship and doing your own thing, then maybe somebody is moving into the space or the phase of becoming a spiritual teacher or leader or advisor. Right? And on some level, you have either a message to share with other people, because the flock could be the people who would flock to you, quote unquote. So maybe you have a message to share, and that would be a way of bringing in the Jack of Spades, because the Jack of Spades can represent news and messages, and also the role of a messenger. And if it's not you being the spiritual leader or teacher, it could be like you come in contact with a spiritual teacher or spiritual leader or some sort of spiritual authority whose message resonates with you. And that may be the thing that helps you move through a difficult situation or a difficult experience, right? Because we have the spades attached to this card, so that again, spades can represent problems, challenges, and obstacles. So it could just be a message that helps you move through a difficult time. Right? But it could come through a particular spiritual teacher, leader, authority, or an advisor. Now, I will say this. What's coming to me with the Jack of Spades as I look at it, another message, playing on the idea that the Jack of Spades can represent a messenger, is that you're being encouraged to maybe investigate something further. When I look at the Jack of Spades, he looks to me like he's looking through a spyglass or a magnifying lens or something of that nature. So for me, that represents investigation. So there may be some information that you are going to feel inclined to investigate further. So now that could be, again, having to do with spiritual teachings of some kind, or some other type of information. Now, it could also be with the Jack of Spades about receiving some kind of truth, but there may be some difficulty in either how the message is presented, because sometimes this could represent a truth, receiving a truth that's difficult to hear or difficult to bear. So it could be, you're on the receiving end of a message that may have some truth to it, but it may not be so easily presented or easily received. So again, for me, shepherd can represent taking a look at maybe what we believe to be true spiritually, or that maybe it's about investigating some sort of teaching of a spiritual nature that may be helpful in resolving a situation, challenge, or problem. And then the last card. Here we have the tree card. Okay, so the tree card is a card that can represent healing, can also represent growth and development. So how interesting that this would follow the shepherd card, right? So this could be about spiritual growth and development, or some sort of teaching or message that leads to or results in some kind of growth and development. But this could also be about healing a situation. Right? Now, since I said healing, it made me come right to the idea about becoming healthy, right? I just talked about, with previous cards, about, dietary changes, working out, getting exercise. And then this card being the end of the reading would talk about we're doing that. Why? Because we want to get healthy, or we want to become healthier, right? And then this card would suggest the possibility is that there may be something having to do with our ancestry or history. This card for me represents like ancestry, lineage. And when we're talking about, health, and we have the house card, remember the house card was family. So there may be something that is hereditary in terms of a physical condition that we are working through. We may have extended family members, because this card can represent extensions of family, whereas the house card represents immediate family. This card for me can represent extended family. So there may be a situation that extends out to other people. In that regard, this could be about family trees, again, bringing back the ancestry, the lineage, those kinds of things. And I talked about this idea with the Jack of Spades about investigating something further. So somebody may be needing to take a look at their family history, or investigating something having to do with their lineage or their family tree. Somebody's taking, an active step in looking that up, and there may be reasons having to do with health surrounding that. Now, this card can also come up when we are planting seeds, and that the seeds we're planting are going to grow and develop over time. So this is offering us that things will grow and develop, but we need to be patient in the process of that growth and development. Right, so there's that. Now, let's turn our attention to the Three of Clubs. Three of Clubs is a card for me. Again, now if you remember with the Five of Clubs, clubs can represent work or business. So here we have another work or business type card. And the 3 talks about growth and development. How interesting that the number 3 is attached to the tree, which is also about growth and development. So we have 2 ways of looking at growth and development with this card alone. Right, so it's emphasizing growth and development in 2 different ways. Right, so for some people, this could be about the growth and development of one's work or business. Right, and so that brings us back to the idea of maybe somebody who's doing self-employment work, right? This is about the growth and development of your work or your business. The tree in that regard would be about branching out, right? Or if you're in your initial stages, it's going to take time for your business to grow and develop. Now, if we're talking about the person who's dusting off their CV or their resume and they're looking for work, here we have an interesting thing. So we have a little bit of a development with the story here. Remember, letter was about the CV and the resume, right? And then the 5 of clubs was talking about a job interview, right? And then the 3 of clubs coming after that in terms of the sequence, this card can, for me, represent on the job training, right? So somebody's changing jobs, they apply for the job, they interview for the job, and then they get the job because of the on the job training aspect of this card, right? And then somebody's going through that whole process, right? In terms of maybe something of a more personal nature, going with the focus being house, then the 3 of clubs can be talking about this idea of coming to some kind of understanding, which is interesting because remember, the 6 of hearts on the house card talked about enlightenment, right? And as a result of becoming enlightened about something, you come to a greater sense of understanding. Right? And also, too, whatever that enlightenment is, the 3 of clubs would say it's helping you grow and develop in a practical way, because this card can be, growth and development in a practical sense. So it's about taking that and putting that to work. And as I'm saying that, I'm going to put the card down because for those who might be doing something having to do with spirituality, then following the Shepherd card, then this could be, and I just had this conversation with somebody earlier today. So for me as a spiritual person, one of the things is I have an appreciation for spiritual theories, concepts, ideas, but one of the things, because I'm very left brain, is that I like to see how that idea, theory, or concept works in life. How do I take that idea and make it work? And then not only that, but see it work. What are the results? Because in number 3 can also represent something being productive, but also producing results, right? So for somebody may be working towards or exploring a spiritual idea, theory, or concept, and you're getting to the point where the way that you will understand it is through seeing it work in your life. Right, and it's very interesting that we have 2 clubs outside of the suit of spades, right? So it's about taking something and making it work and seeing the results of that process, right? And then you have a greater understanding of that because you have now a physical experience to attach to that, right? And that would be a nice way to bring the King of Diamonds back in because remember, the King of Diamonds is about mastery of something in the physical, right? So I think overall, as I wrap this up, I think that there may be a situation that we're focusing on this week. It's about getting our either literal or metaphorical house in order to some degree. There may be something that we're dealing with that is close to home, something that may involve either personal immediate family or extended family members. Remember, because we had the house, we had the Six of Hearts, Five of Hearts, and the tree. So there may be something having to do with that, and maybe something having to do with healing. And that could be healing in the emotional sense. Moon, Knights to tree. So this is healing on an emotional level, emotional satisfaction, healing. Or for some people, it could be in the physical sense where we're doing something with our diet and exercise, and we're seeing the results of that as we consider exploring, is there something more to that in terms of a condition that's hereditary? And of course, the other scenario is that somebody's doing something with their career and they are doing something with their resume, applying for work, going on interviews, and then landing a job because they get to experience on-the-job training. So on that note, I'm going to go ahead and end the reading here. I am James Himm Mitchell, and as I wrap up, I'd like to thank you for sharing space here with me for this week's reading, and I look forward to sharing the same space with you again in our next video reading together. So until then, I'm hoping that you have a wonderful day, and I'm hoping that you have a wonderful week. Take care.